And there we go. We are live on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. We're starting it, man. The first time here. How are we doing, man? Welcome.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited. It's going to be a good first stream for you. And, UFC Vegas 34, we're scraping the bottom, but I think that there's still some interesting spots. So let's take a look at this card, man. Should be good stuff.
Yeah, man, there's no one I'd rather have here on the first stream. So I appreciate you being here. And you know what? Let's get right into it. I mean, we had some, I'm not going to say eventful, but there was a few things that happened in the weigh-ins today. To get a chance to look at any of them or any of the face-offs?
Yeah, I took a look at the weigh-ins. I took a look at the face-offs, and a lot of intensity, man. I like the face-offs that we saw today. Seemed like a lot of guys are here to fight, and I'm thinking if you have violence tickets on some of these fights right now, you're probably feeling pretty good.
That's the thing, man. The thing with the low level cards and the not many people who we know are fighting is there's going to be violence. There's going to be a lot of unders hitting. There's going to be some great fights. Usually, what happens? What was it? 3 weeks ago, there was this horrible card, fell to pieces, and some unbelievable finishes came of it. Right. So I'm actually looking forward to it.
Underdogs came through, which I wouldn't be totally surprised to see here either. You know, not a ton of favorites that I really felt confident backing on a money line perspective this week.
Yeah. I don't even have that many. Like, usually I have a lot more action than this. I only have a few things locked in, but the plays, I am feeling good. I know we talked about a few things later. We'll get to them in a bit in the future, but first things first, weigh-ins today, things on top of my mind, just going to get them out of here right away. William Knight is a beast. Like, that man is shredded, and that's just, I can't get over that. Me and my roommates absolutely love the guy because he's just a freak of an athlete. The line's coming in on him. I know I'm skipping ahead a few fights here, but quick read. You still got William Knight in this spot?
Man, I would still, ever so slightly lean with William Knight. But, the only problem that I have here is that I thought William Knight should have been more competitive in the Dawoon Jung fight. And I say that as somebody that was a Dawoon Jung bettor. But I just feel like he doesn't have that many concrete skills to win fights. Fabio Cherant obviously is exploitable, but I think that if this is a fight that remains on the feet, Fabio Cherant probably looks, somewhat decent here and probably outlands him. But I also think that, if he gets on top of him, he does have scary enough ground and pound. He is a big physical athlete. He's probably really hard to get off the top. And Fabio Cherant has never impressed me with his grappling. He's got a couple submission finishes, I think, but, he really is exploitable from a defensive standpoint in his grappling. That Alonzo Menafield finish was kind of embarrassing at the UFC level. So I think, man, I would ever so slightly favor him, but this is kind of a slop fest to me. And, I actually thought both guys looked pretty good at weigh-ins. Fabio Cherant, he looked pretty thick and well-muscled himself and probably better shape for this fight than he was for his last fight.
All right. I just had to get that off the top of my mind, man. It's been on my mind all day that guy's a beast, and I'm not going to bet him because I know it's not a very smart bet, but someone like that is just someone you want to have. It's not even that he's a good fighter. He just looks like he will be. Those rookie friends you have watching for the first time probably like, oh, this guy's going to kill him, right? So kind of funny to see that. But
man. I actually think that's the trap with William Knight. I feel like last time the line kept moving in his favor in that Dawoon Jung fight, not because he had any better skills, not because he'd shown more in the UFC than Dawoon Jung. Just he looked really good at the weigh-in, and I think that's sometimes a trap that we could all get suckered into. When you see somebody who's really well built, well muscled, you're like, man, this guy might have a real chance here. But it's about skills at the end of the day, and neither of these guys have bankable skills that you really want to lay a huge investment on, in my opinion. Maybe that'll be proven wrong here. I think whoever wins is going to look like a hindsight favorite. Unless it turns into a range, just staring match, which both of these guys are not opposed to doing. So I think that this is a pass fight for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for everybody who is watching this, the 4 live viewers, thank you very much for the first time. But the thing I got to say is if you guys want to see all of our betting breakdowns, make sure to check out Liam's channel. We did a huge betting breakdown yesterday. We're just going to skim over a bunch of them here, talk about what we want to, hang out, have a good time. You got any comments, leave them in the comment section down below. Leave them in the chat. We'll answer them for you right away. Another thing, too, the biggest thing of the entire weigh-ins is someone you wouldn't expect to miss weight here in Kelvin Gastelum. What do you think that's going to affect the performance tomorrow?
Man, I thought that was just embarrassing, frankly, from Kelvin. You know, is it surprising? No, it's not. It's not really surprising. What is surprising to me is that the line continues to move in Gaslam's favor. I think he's down to plus 120 on the money line. And, not to say that I'm going to get involved the other way. I'm probably not going to stand in front of him there because I don't have the strongest read on this fight. But I do think that Jared Cannonier, man, he's a scary guy. He's definitely a scary guy to line up in front of from a betting perspective. He hits so hard. He's got a pretty serviceable leg kicking game to go along with the power punching. He's not, a one-dimensional power puncher. He kind of has varied skills on the feet. And on top of that, was he more exploitable in a grappling perspective at the heavier weight classes? I truly think he was. Size, mass, strength play a huge role in grappling alongside of skill. And I do think that Jared Cannonier probably not quite as skilled as Kelvin Gastelum in a grappling perspective, but I don't think it'll be a big gap or a huge gap, I should say. Kelvin's definitely the better and more seasoned wrestler, but he doesn't tend to exploit people from a grappling perspective. And I think that Jared, he's got the strength to just wrench somebody up who fires off a double leg attack in ways that aren't always the most technical, but are very effective and dissuade you from shooting, because he's a really scary guy to get caught in that clinch scenario when he's controlling you. He tends to land a lot of strikes when he is in a dominant clinch position. He doesn't get there all the time, but when he gets there, he makes full use of it. He takes advantage of those positions, and his ground and pound is absolutely hellacious. So I think if you see one of those Kelvin Gastelum, turn bailout rolls to turtle, he could get pounded out in that position, more likely than he gets finished at range necessarily. I feel like Jared, if he's able to get a control position and rain down some heavy shots, that would be how he stops Kelvin here. But he's also a dangerous guy at range, man. He's got those uppercuts, and Gaslam's not a very tall guy. Going to have to be closing the range in order to land his own strikes. I feel like one of those counter hooks or uppercuts from Jared Cannonier could be the first shot to knock out Kelvin Gastelum. So I would take Jared Cannonier in this spot from a picking perspective. Probably not going to bet him unless he goes down minus 125 or so. But I have to say I'm a little surprised by the line movement given, Gastelum looks like a doughboy at 85, and he really has like a 170-pound frame. And I don't think that Jared Cannonier would be, misplaced as a top 10 205 pounder. So I think he's well situated at 185 pounds. It's going to be the much bigger guy after rehydrating. So, man, I feel like Kelvin Gastelum, he's got the age advantage. That's his real, saving grace here. And honestly, he's got the better chin, right? If you look Jared Cannonier, he has been finished up weight classes, but he's been finished by southpaws. He's been finished by left side attacks. That's a concern on the Jared Cannonier side. And he's starting to hit that age threshold where we see, fighters that are 38 and older, they're not really getting submitted. They're not really, losing these grind out decisions every time. They're getting knocked out. And Jared Cannonier's been knocked out before. He has a higher knockdown absorbed rate than Kelvin Gastelum does in fewer UFC fights. So, some red flags there on the Jared Cannonier side. That's why I've passed this fight from a betting perspective, although I'm seeing the under start to creep back down in price. It had creeped up to, I think, minus 125, minus 130. Now the under 4.5 rounds is back to minus 115. I want to say on Bet Online. So that was a little tempting for me. This is still a middleweight fight. Middleweight fights above average, greater than 50% end inside the distance. And when you're looking at the firepower that we have on both sides, when we're looking at the potential vulnerability and the chin of Jared Cannonier, when we're looking at the fact that Kelvin Gastelum has absorbed an absolutely hellacious amount of damage in his career, including the Adesanya fights and the Whitaker fight last time out, where, again, he took a significant amount of damage. I really think that either one of these guys could get knocked out here. Either one of these guys could get finished. We've seen Kelvin get kind of like randomly submitted before when he seemingly lost focus. I don't know. I feel like Kelvin's a hard guy to put money behind in this spot. I had a small wager on him against Robert Whitaker, and I wasn't satisfied with how that fight played out. So, I'm going to stay away from this fight from a betting perspective, but I'm going to keep my eye on that under. And if it hits plus money, I would say I'm going to get at least a half unit on the under. But otherwise, this is a fight that I might stay away from. I have to admit the Cannonier inside the distance line, I think it was plus 200, was a little tempting. But I think money might have come in on that. Let me take a look. We've got currently
betonline.ag.
Oh, yeah, dude. It has gotten steamed a little bit. So I think it was plus 200 for most of the week, and now it's down to plus 170 for Cannonier inside the distance. So, yeah, I think that's how I expect this fight to end. I think Jared Cannonier is probably going to be the first guy to stop Kelvin Gastelum with strikes. But, that's a hard thing to bet on. That's it. It's one thing to pick that. It's another thing to bet and put money against it. And having not seen Kelvin get knocked out, that's why I ended up ultimately staying off the play.
Yeah, and like my prediction yesterday on your channel was Gastelum by decision. I think that's probably my favorite outcome here, and I am on the dog, which is maybe a bit unlikely this week. But I mean, the biggest thing for me was Gastelum smaller. He's a 170er versus a guy who used to fight at 265. It's something that you don't like to see. Yet they're not that much difference in terms of size. Like of course, there's going to be a difference, and you see it, but I expected a lot more. Only 2 inches in height, but oh my god,
they have a similar width.
Beasts. Yeah, but different ways.
And one is a little, thicker on the sides.
Yes. So I still have no action on it. I mean, I think the only way I'm going to play Gastelum this week is going to be on some DraftKings. I mean, in terms of underdogs, I still don't see him being knocked out that much. So he does have a higher floor than a lot of people because I think he is able to survive. I mean, he got hit with some big shots in the Whitaker fight. There's no question that Gastelum's chin is elite. And so whereas Cannonier does bring a lot of power to the table, I don't think he finishes him in this spot. I do see why people think he does because, again, like the big question of this fight is going to be the size, but I'm going to stay away from it there. Wouldn't mind the under. I had someone DM me today asking me if, because there's a DraftKings Sportsbook odds boost for Gastelum by KO or TKO. And
honestly, what is the odds boosted to? Because Jared Cannonier, I'm not saying he has a suspect chin, but I'm saying he's been knocked out twice by southpaws in the UFC. And he's facing another southpaw here who's got fast hands, and he is at that range of age. I think he's 38 years old, 37 and a half, something like that. And there is a statistically significant drop off in fighters 38 years of age and older getting knocked out as a higher equity of their loss percentage than normal. By a lot.
The odds went from plus 600 to plus 800. So you can get plus 800 on Gastelum by KO or TKO. It's still not my most likely outcome, obviously. But I mean,
play that.
It might be worth a shot.
Gastelum inside
Sprinkle a little bit.
See, my problem is I always feel like I'm greedy when I play KO, when I play the sub prop, and I'm like, what could I get the inside the distance for? And I think Gastelum inside the distance was plus 390 yesterday. I want to say it's plus 375 today. So that's taken some action, and I think that might be wise. Jared Cannonier, I want to double check this because I've been saying it all week, and I think it's true. But I also slept for an hour and 45 minutes a couple days ago, so I can't speak with full authority without going back to check the record. But I believe that according to ShareDog, Jared Cannonier, I'm talking about, did have a 5-round fight that was a split decision on the regional scene that he won against Tony Lopez January 22nd at AFC 104, Kill a Gorilla versus Kryptonite Tony Lopez, and he won a 5-round fight with 5-minute rounds with a split decision. So I have heard everybody saying that he did not do that, and I have not gone back and verified via watching the tape. So maybe that's a mislabeling by ShareDog, but for whatever that's worth, people have been saying he hasn't gone 5 rounds. I've seen that in 2014 he did go 5 rounds. And on top of that, he looks in phenomenal shape for this fight, which is the only thing that concerns me. I think his recoverability, might not be so compromised. How good of shape you're in has a lot to do with how likely you are to be knocked out. And I really think that Jared Cannonier is in phenomenal shape, and even if he gets stung, is probably going to be able to recover here in all likelihood. But that's not a guarantee. Plus 800, that starts to be a number where I could maybe be talked into it. given the age and the other considerations. But because I'm not on the Gastelum side, I'd probably ultimately stay off that. But if you are on the Gastelum side, plus 800 is a really good ticket for the knockout prop, in my opinion.
There you go. I'll make sure to message him that clip just for him. So I appreciate you breaking that down for me. I completely agree. Yeah. I do see the possibility of it happening. I think that if I'm going to bet, usually when I bet on underdogs as a whole, you're going to take them money line anyways. I'm not going to be greedy by it because Gastelum is maybe not the most potent finisher, right? I mean, he has a lot of finishes on his record, but he's not like he's more than content to wrestle or against certain guys, more content to wrestle or strike. But there's always that possibility, and at plus 800, that's a ticket you might want to be holding.
He knocks out older guys, though. That is a trend that we've noticed in his career, and he's kind of got another older guy in front of him. But is it the same? I feel like he fought a lot of guys with miles, and there's not as many miles on a guy like Jared Cannonier. Kind of looks like the fresher fighter in a lot of his fights, despite his age, just because he's such a tremendous athlete. And I think that he is probably somebody who can compete with Kelvin from an athleticism standpoint, which I don't know that Kelvin is used to seeing. But, man, I feel like it's a really hard fight to get a solid read on because I can 100%. See it going a lot of ways, man. It's a tricky main event. The UFC has a really a tough job of matching up these main events, and I think Gastelum as a short notice replacement still makes for a very compelling fight here. But ultimately, I got to side with Jared Cannonier. I think he has more firepower at this point. And I also just think he's a little bit more willing to get in the pocket and throw these days meaningful shots, whereas I feel like Kelvin sometimes can get stung early and, kind of be content to sit back and be a little more low volume and lose the decision. I thought he kind of got stung in that Till fight early on, and it took him till the third round to convince himself to get back into it. And it's just a little bit of a concerning habit that I'm seeing start to emerge. And, that we talk about Kelvin's never been finished, but that Adesanya fight, it was a war. It was a great fight, but he may have poured out the jug in that fight because he got knocked down 4 times. He really got the hell beat out of him. That fight was obviously eligible for stoppage. And I really think that, could it be a fight that changes his life and career? Man, it really could. This is a guy who definitely should be making 170 pounds, who's now borderline missing weight at 186 pounds. Granted, it was a shorter notice fight for him, but not that short notice, and really no excuse
not at all.
At this point. So, man, just kind of embarrassing, man. I think Kelvin needs this win to remain relevant in the division. Otherwise, he's probably just going to be fed the Khamzat Chimaevs and, whoever else the UFC wants to build of the world moving forward.
All right. Well, I love the breakdown. We'll have some Gastelum shares. I'm not as high on Cannonier as others. I do believe that most people are banking him to finish Gastelum, and I don't think he does that. I think Gastelum does outpoint him to a decision if it does get to that. I mean, if there's more volume, he's, like you said, southpaw. But anyways, moving right along, a very, very hotly contested bout this weekend, the co-main event. Marco Madsen looks in phenomenal shape. I mean, you expect that from an Olympian, but he's looking pretty good.
Especially one training at Fight Ready.
Oh, and he's looking fight ready. I'll tell you that for sure, man. Oh my God. No, he's looking really, really good. He looks ready to go, but I'm still seeing lots of love on Clay Guida. You still staying the same way as you did yesterday?
Dude, this is a fight that I'm really torn on this fight, man. On the one hand, I feel like this is a fight where Clay Guida might be more than Marco Madsen's ready for. We don't really have the clearest gauge on Marco Madsen's skills, in my opinion. The Austin Hubbard fight, impressive win, but, concerning visuals on the feet, not a thorough 3-round performance that you could feel good about. And do I think he's going to be in better shape here? Yes. Do I think he will necessarily need to go 3 rounds to beat Clay Guida? Not necessarily. He could lock something up. He could snatch a guillotine, by example, when Clay Guida shoots, because Clay Guida, if there's one thing we know about him, he's going to attempt takedowns. He's going to throw overhand rights. He's going to stay in your face. I actually think that if it becomes a striking match, that could be a really interesting proposition. If Clay Guida is able to defend some takedowns, make it tricky, then Clay Guida has a chance to work his way into this fight and cause a lot of problems for Marco Madsen. But, Clay is 39 years old, already had a whole career in the UFC. That's something that concerns me a little bit. Michael Johnson, while being an impressive victory for Clay Guida and that people didn't think and the market didn't think he was going to win that fight, Michael Johnson has really found ways to lose a lot of fights in the UFC. So I feel like that's kind of a hard barometer these days. Even that Thiago Moises fight, Michael Johnson looks like the clear better fighter and then has a mental lapse and it's another loss for Michael Johnson. It's like no matter what's happening in a Michael Johnson fight, it's eligible that Michael Johnson will find a way to lose the fight. And that to me is a concerning factor here. Clay Guida, I think he has some upside in this matchup, but I feel like the value has been extracted, right? I think that the line opened more in favor of Marco Madsen. Let me look at the market opening prices here.
Madsen opened at a Madsen, the line was way closer.
Really? Odds makers opened Guida the favorite, didn't they?
No. But they did. Oh, no. Sorry, that was wrong book. Yeah, he did open up minus 250 and was bet down all the way to minus 125.
Wow.
So Madsen, that is.
So, yeah, do I think that there was value on Guida at plus 210 or whatever he opened? For sure. Because Marco Madsen just hasn't proven enough. But ultimately, do I think Marco Madsen is probably going to win the fight? Yeah, I think Marco Madsen should bank 2 rounds here. I think Marco Madsen is, man, the only thing that, dude, I keep coming back to my concerns here, man, which is just like, I don't like betting on anybody that doesn't have solid 15-minute cardio. I feel like that's a real concern. And
that's the thing. But I
feel like he might have it now, but it's hard to say because somebody went to a different gym or because they look physically more impressive that they have better cardio. And I've heard people point out rightly that wrestlers sometimes deal with this difficulty in cardio management over 15 minutes when we're used to being explosive for 6 or 7 minutes. And it is a real adjustment trying to control that. And you see a lot of people have success like Khabib who are able to make somebody carry weight against the cage where they're able to use a tag team partner like the cage to do a lot of the work for them. When you're just horsing people around, lifting them up, slamming them, doing mat returns, things like that, it's exhausting. There's a reason those matches are only 6 and 7 minutes. It would get boring otherwise. And that's how long you could do it really hard for. So I think that if this becomes a scrambling mess for the first 6 or 7 minutes, it's anybody's ball game. That's the real problem here. And that's why I think Clay Guida was the side at that underdog number, especially the big one early. But as the price starts to come in, I think it's probably just a pass ultimately. I don't know that there's as much value on Clay Guida at plus 135. But I do think that there was value on Clay Guida. Anything plus 160 and above, it's like, I feel like that's kind of a must play. I didn't see it when it was at that price. And so it is what it is. But I think that Marco Madsen, he probably should win here. He probably should be making more improvements at this stage in his career because he's younger in his career. We've seen older Olympians come in and find success like Daniel Cormier. It's not outside of the realm of possibility. And so I think Marco Madsen has a chance of making a run of some kind in the UFC, maybe to the bottom of that top 15 in the lightweight division, because he's just a little too old, I think, to crack that top portion. But, I think Clay Guida is probably not going to be making any such run at this point in his career. And so that's why I think it's ultimately going to be a pass for me at this stage. But if you got in on Clay Guida early, bravo, because I think you probably got some value there because there's hype on Marco Madsen. But I think that, it's kind of deserved. He's at a really solid camp, seems to be taking his career seriously, surrounding himself with the right people and probably the right Flintstone vitamins to make a real dent in that bottom half of that lightweight division in the UFC.
Yeah, and like I said yesterday,
man, he hasn't proven that he's worthy of an investment.
Oh, you're right. And that's the thing is he has a lot to go. We've only seen him have, what, 2 fights in the UFC, right? So
That's
he's
correct.
10-0. He's very green, and
And who
he's
has
so
he beaten?
one-dimensional.
Who has he
Yeah,
beaten? Austin Hubbard. It's like that, and that's a fine win, but
yeah,
it's nothing exceptional. That would be like an upper level regional win. That would be a very low level UFC win, by all things considered. So, credit to him,
yeah.
but got a lot more to prove. And Clay Guida isn't a guy that's on his third or fourth or fifth UFC fight. He's a guy who's on his 20th and 21st and 30th. And it's just had so many more professional fights. It's hard to get in the way of a guy like that. But, man, matchups between 36 and 39-year-old lightweights, it's like something you don't see every day, kind of a weird one. Two wrestlers going against each other at that age, too. It's just a weird fight, man, and should be a fun enough slot fest in that co-main event.
Yeah, you from what we see so far, it looks like if Guida's going to win, it's going to be a late finish because we have seen Madsen tire out. So when a guy is so one-dimensional like Madsen is, but he's great at what he does. I mean, silver medalist, good for you. But he's gonna struggle in different aspects of the game. And Guida's one of those guys who, whereas he is predominantly a wrestler and does throw those big hands, he's got other paths and he's got that experience that may be able to exploit Madsen maybe in the later rounds as well. I think Madsen does dominate those first 2 rounds and win a decision. Has to, but if you're holding a Madsen ticket, you're going to be sweating out that round 3, right? So I am liking Madsen here. I think he's also a very good pay up option on DraftKings just because he's going to get those takedowns, going to get that control time. He's going to win you minutes, right? So I think that he is a great pay up option with a very safe floor. But speaking of Marco Madsen, he beat a guy in Austin Hubbard. And I know we were talking about this earlier. Vince Pichel. No money's coming in that I've seen, but I'm waiting. I think we're gonna get a better line of Vince Pichel, and I'm ready to pounce. I saw someone tweet out. I think it was Paul earlier. Tweet out that it was plus 2,100 for Pichel submission or something like that, which I don't have in my books because that'd be absolutely insane. But
yeah, I think he said that was only in Canada.
Hey,
as well.
I'm Canadian.
Yeah, you should be looking for it, man.
I am looking for it. But I think that Vince Pichel gets this fight done. More than likely, I see him winning at a decision and grinding out Austin Hubbard. But I think a submission is very live because we've seen Hubbard give up the back when he does go to get up. So, Vince Pichel ticket coming soon. What are your thoughts?
Man, yeah, Vince Pichel by sub on my book is plus 575. So, Bet Online, they are not getting duped by old Mr. Liam today for the Vince Pichel sub. But, I don't think it's like a lock outcome. Vince Pichel is going to go out there and sub Austin Hubbard. I don't think it's a lock like that. But I think that, Vince Pichel has just proven much more so far in the UFC. Like Vince Pichel has a pretty sneaky good resume. The only concerning statistics you see is takedown defense isn't great, but that's probably colored and painted by the fact that he lost to Gregor Gillespie and Rustam Habilov, who are just like some of the most overwhelming pressure wrestlers in the division. Other than that, Vince Pichel pressure wrestles people to death, and he's very good at it. I think that Vince Pichel, in all likelihood, is going to really test the grappling of Austin Hubbard here, and he's probably going to secure takedowns. We know that Vince Pichel is going to attempt probably 6 to 7 takedowns here on average, and I think he's probably going to secure several of them. I think he's going to get a lot of control time based on that, and I think he's probably going to have a pretty decent chance of winning. If you listen to the interviews and everything from Vince Pichel this week, he's talking about he's ready to do violence this weekend, and that makes me think that maybe that Vince Pichel inside the distance at plus 380 is worth a poke. I actually think it was plus 390 when I just looked over and they updated the line to say plus 380. So I think money might be coming in on Pichel inside the distance. I think, he hasn't cashed it a lot. He's won a lot of decisions in the UFC, but he's done a lot of damage too. And he's attempted a bunch of submissions, never gotten one in the UFC. I think that this might be an opportunity where he could get one. We've seen Joe Solecki come in here, instantly take the back and finish Austin Hubbard. So I think that Austin Hubbard, he's getting better, and that's the thing that might be a little scary in this spot. Big age advantage for Austin Hubbard here. But I do think Vince Pichel is just a better fighter with better skills right now. And, both of these guys have spent a lot of time grappling in their UFC fights. The difference is that Vince Pichel has been dominating a lot of the grappling that he's been involved in, except against the very best, like top 15 type talent in the division. And otherwise, he's been slamming people around and dominating them in the wrestling. Almost 4 takedowns on average per fight, per 15 minutes. So Vince Pichel is an animal. I think he's going to put a beating on Austin Hubbard here, and that's the way I feel about it. Haven't put my money where my mouth is yet. I, like you, have been waiting for that Vince Pichel plus money to come, and I don't know that it's going to. But I could also just say the under 2.5 at plus 210. I don't hate that as a look either. I think that's the biggest under on the slate this week. Biggest under on the slate this week is Vince Pichel and Austin Hubbard. And Hubbard, he hasn't shown a tremendous finishing ability. I think he's 33% finish rate in the UFC. So he's not the biggest finisher, but he did finish Max Roskopf. That was kind of a weird one. And but he was putting a lot of pressure on him, and he probably could have finished him the normal way if Max Roskopf had come out for the 3rd round. So I think,
did he finish Max Roskopf or did Max finish himself, right? So
I know, but either way, man, it's like he did the damage. So I'm like, I don't know. Austin Hubbard, if Vince Pichel was to slow down here, he is a pretty old lightweight. I think he's coming off of some kind of surgery. I think he's had 1 fight since, but he's had some major surgeries. He's a little bit older. Could we see the wheels fall out from Vince Pichel and he gets finished here? I hope not, but for plus 210, Vince Pichel has an opportunity to finish here. And if Austin Hubbard is able to catch him or to force a standing fight, I think a standing fight doesn't mean Austin Hubbard kills him, but I do think a standing fight favors Austin Hubbard, right, moderately.
You ready for this?
What's up?
I got Vince Pichel finish plus 450 and Vince Pichel by submission plus 850.
Not bad.
So it's not plus 2100, but I see many, many ways for Vince Pichel to finish this fight. And I think that if he is able to dominate the wrestling the way he does, Austin Hubbard's very tough. I'm going to give him that, but he does show a lot of sloppiness in his get-up game in terms of holes that people can exploit. And I mean, if he does the same thing he's done to other fighters in the past, Vince Pichel has that experience. He has that veteran prowess that he's going to be able to take that back, take that neck, and probably choke him out the same way Joe Solecki did. So I may have just found myself another bet,
I think I might add that plus 380 on Vince Pichel inside the distance. I'm going to go small on that, probably 0.2 to 0.3 units, somewhere in that range. And then I'm probably going to do 1.1 on Vince Pichel money line at minus 110. But I still have this inkling that he's going to turn into a dog at some point. So I don't know if I should wait or play it. You know what I mean? I'm kind of having that anxiety that Pichel's going to get steamed, and all of a sudden I'm going to look, he's going to be minus 130, and I'm going to be cursing myself that I didn't play it earlier. But man, it's just hard to read the line movement on this fight. I kind of expected Vince Pichel to be minus 125 or better in this spot, even with the market. I thought that even with market adjustment, just based on his body of work in the UFC, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and the thing I'm looking at right now, I know you don't play much DraftKings, but he is 8.2K, if that means anything to you. A great value spot because we do not have a lot of underdogs this week, right? Especially on DraftKings that will score very well, or who are, I would say, locks, right? So when you're as confident as I am with a guy in Vince Pichel, he is someone you can really target, and I'm really looking forward to playing him this weekend. Moving right along, though, another fight I really want to target because I see some decent finishing upside is the first fight of the night in Raheem Brajimaj versus Sasha Palatnikov.
Oh, dude, I'm right there with you. I saw this fight when it was listed. I think the under was minus 140 for the under 2.5. And I was like, man, that's a spot I really want to get involved at. And then I'm doing other things. I write it down. I'm looking through my slate. When I go back, it's minus 155. I'm like, no. And I think it slipped even further. So yeah, man, it's obviously a spot that the market has been targeting as well. I think you're really onto something here.
I think that this is one where either Ramaj is going to finish him early or probably get finished late. We've seen him tire out, and we've seen that resiliency from Palatnikov, that he's able to come back, he's able to endure. But other than that, I'm not that high on Palatnikov. I think he is very subpar. I think he's got a lot of holes in his game, just like Impa Kasagna was able to submit him the last time out. And let me just say, Brahimaj is levels above Impa Kasagna, in my opinion, on the ground. Impa's not a ground fighter most of the time. So Brahimaj has that. He's got many BJJ accolades. He's got a very respectable, very solid ground game. That usually is his bread and butter. But the reason that he is not expected to do that as much because his first time out, he didn't shoot a single takedown. I mean, he was dominating on the feet to the point where his ear literally fell off his face. So I think that he learns from his mistakes. He's able to come out here, shoot a takedown early, and I think he's able to really dominate these first few rounds. I actually have a play locked in on him straight because of that PFL parlay I was talking about yesterday. So I pretty much got plus money on him going into tomorrow. I'm really liking him in the spot. I'm liking him to submit him and a good DraftKings option as well. Do you see it the same way as me, or am I crazy?
I think that I see a lot of what you're talking about, man. I think that, if this is a protracted stand-up affair, Sasha Palatnikov is probably going to beat the shit out of him. That would be my only concern on the Raiz Brahimaj side here, because Sasha's a big guy and he throws out more volume, and I think he's he's a hittable guy too, but I do think that he's got pretty solid body kicks. I do think he's got pretty decent punching, and his pace and pressure is enough to break a lower level fighter. What is Ramiz Brahimaj? It's kind of hard to make sense of him so far. It was a really bad showing, I thought, his first fight out, but I also see all the upsides you're talking about. I went back, I watched his regional footage. He's very solid. His jiu-jitsu is, it's kind of hard to rate somebody's jiu-jitsu when they're going against someone who's not very good, but against people that weren't very good, he was doing a tremendous job. And on top of that, I think he's got decent enough power. There's a couple guys where he stung him with the hands before he got that choke or before he got the submission locked in. So, I think he's got some, power at least. He's got a pretty decent punching mechanics, but I don't think he's a tremendous fighter on the feet. I do think he's predictable. I do think he's hittable on the feet. I think he's got to get this fight to the ground. I think if he does that, Sasha's exploitable, man. That's really been an issue for him. I thought that Impa fight was scary. Some of the visuals I saw from a grappling perspective, where the no hooks rear naked choke. It was a tough way to get finished for a UFC level fighter, and his win over Kosi, it was impressive enough, but it was also like, now we've kind of seen a few examples of the Kosi brothers exploding under even moderate pressure. And it looked like that Kosi brother was gone after 2 minutes, like nothing left. And I was like baffled watching the fight. So I think that, Sasha, if you go back and watch his regional fights, he's not bad, man, but he's just, he's a stand-up fighter, and I think that if he gets taken to the ground by somebody who's got solid skills, like Brahimaj, he is probably going to get finished. I think we could see another rear naked choke. I think that we could see a guillotine finish. But I also think that, like you said, man, I wouldn't bank on the fact that Brahimaj is going to get finished, though. He seems like a tough guy. He was taking an absolute beating and coming forward. He did get stung at the end of that fight, but I don't know that Palatnikov is necessarily going to be able to land the punches with such authority as Griffin was. So that would be my other concern there for the under. But man, I do think that there's a lot of reason to think that this fight's going under. I think there's a lot of reason to think this fight doesn't finish. Value might be gone on those from a money line or from a betting perspective. I think the market's pretty wise to that. But man, I do think Brahimaj by submission is the most likely outcome for this fight. But I do think it's a fight where we could see a pretty high amount of variance. You know what I mean? I think this, because it's low level, somebody's probably getting finished. Somebody's probably going to do something crazy. Somebody might do something stupid. And I think it should be good fun while it lasts, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a club and sub either direction. I wouldn't be, you know what I mean? I just feel like there's a lot of variance in this spot. and both guys are a little green. So we could see mistakes. We could see somebody get overexcited and then get finished on their way in. Just strikes me as a fight where a silly outcome might take place. But I do think Brahimaj by submission is the most likely outcome for sure.
I agree with that. And the reason why I like the under even more is I do see Brahimaj get really tired if he does grapple a lot, right? So that round 3, if you are holding a straight ticket the way I am, if it does get to that round 3, you'll be sweating it just because cardio is important. Talk about that in the co-main, right? So I think that his best packed victory is going to be those first 2 rounds, catching a neck, catching a choke, catching anything, just to submit him, get him out of there. Now, I can't go without talking about another fight I really want to target on DraftKings this week. My fight of the night candidate, one word to describe it all: chaos. Pantoja, Royval.
I knew what you were talking about there.
This fight is going to be absolute fireworks, and just the way I said it yesterday really, really, really puts it all together. It's just you have one fighter who's amazing on paper and there's no flaws in his game versus someone who likes to bring out flaws in people. And I'm really excited to see what Royval can do against a guy as stellar and well-rounded as Pantoja. Now, like I said, you're not big on DraftKings, so if I'm speaking nonsense, just let me know. But Royval's 7,400. He's a big underdog this week, and I think that if he does win this fight, I think that he is able to get him out of there. I think that a finish is very likely in this fight from either side. I'm not minding him as a punt play, as like a go big or go home option at that cheap price tag. What are you thinking? Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy. I am I don't know a ton about DraftKings, but I have, a fair idea of some of the DFS language. And yeah, it does surprise me to hear that he's priced so cheaply, because I do think among underdogs on the slate, who's going to finish, man, it's kind of hard to say somebody's going to finish Pantoja because he's durable as all get out. But Royval, it wouldn't be like or it's not. It doesn't have to necessarily be, he cracked him on the chin. It could just be a pace and an overwhelming type stoppage. It could be, just runs out of gas, and so the better grappler gets out grappled. It's like I think those are live possibilities here. But I also do think, Pantoja deserves credit and respect. He's a hard guy to put away. He's been in there with very talented fighters in the UFC for a while now and hasn't been put away by these guys. Has even put away guys who are historically tremendously durable, the likes of Brandon Moreno on The Ultimate Fighter. It's like this guy just has a track record of violence left in his wake. And I do think it's hard to line up in front of him. But then I'll also say this, man, Brandon Royval's cashed underdog tickets for a lot of people, and people who've bet against him have, come out, feeling and looking foolish before. And dude, it's because, it looks like this game is designed to fall apart as it keeps going up to the higher level, but then he's beating guys who are pretty credible fighters. And, the Kai Kara France win, could he have gotten knocked out and lost in that spot? Yeah, for sure. But he's durable. He's tough. He keeps coming forward. He can crack and hurt his opponents even when he's hurt. And he's got that really opportunistic submission game. He's a dangerous fighter. And I think it's such a fun fight, man. It's maybe the fight I'm looking forward to the most on the card.
100%.
Certainly top 3. I think, honestly, man, it's a pretty entertaining fight card, man. I really like that Trevin Jones fight. I really like this fight. And I think Kelleher and Pilarte, it would be very tough for those guys to put on a boring fight. So I'm seeing a lot of fun fights here. Maybe not the biggest stars coming out to party at UFC Vegas 34, but at least we're going to have a smile and throw back some of that popcorn, and hopefully people with them under tickets are cashing a lot of them, man. I think it's going to be a fun, violent night.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think Royval does instill that chaos where you never know what's going to happen. And that's exactly why I have no bets on this fight. I mean, the smart play is going to be Pantoja. Better in a lot of aspects. He is such just a well-reformed, well-rounded fighter. But you never know what you get with Royval. He brings out just this absolutely insane pace, this volume, this crazy style, and it's just something I'm really looking forward to. I'm really, really liking a lot of the fights you mentioned as well, and I don't think we can go along without patting yourself on the back. And why don't you tell them about what spot you got on Trevin Jones going into tomorrow?
Sure, man. And If I could be honest with you, I wasn't thrilled. I've had this happen to me a number of times where I get what I think is a pretty decent line, and then the opponent that I'm lining up against misses weight, and it pisses me off, man, every effing time because there's no getting back your bet. It's like at least the services I use, there's no canceling out your bet. So it's like once I place the wager down, it doesn't matter if the person makes or misses weight, right? But I got Trevin Jones. I got him at plus 107. He's been hanging around. Let's see what he's at right now. I know the line's been moving a little bit in and out. He's back to minus 145. I saw him earlier today at minus 135 on betonline.ag. And, he was listed at minus 300 when this line dropped, guys. So Trevin Jones started at minus 300. I got him at plus 107. So I'll always take that kind of shot when I can get it. Trevin Jones, very talented fighter, historically been slept on by the market. My concerns for him in this fight is that he's been hanging around on weight for a long time looking for a fight. This is like several weeks in a row. He's like trying to get onto a fight card. But I think that only adds to his hunger. I think that this is an incredible an incredibly underrated fighter, man. He's got a lot of fights. So he's won and lost some fights. He's responded to career losses. We've seen how he's been able to do that. And, man, I think that he's kind of come to a point in his career where he realizes, leaving fights to decisions gets dicey, even if you do the right thing. So he goes out here and he looks for finishes now. And he's pretty creative, man. He works a lot with that lead hand. He's a right hand lead, but that's his power hand. And so he's able to sneak in these shots that guys aren't expecting. Most people attune their defense to watch that rear hand, circle towards that rear hand. But, how do you plan for a guy who fights in such an unconventional fashion? It's a little hard to do. On top of that, you got Trevin Jones with a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's got submission finishes, 4 of them in his career, 2 of them right before he came to the UFC, and those were in fights where somebody wanted to come out there and wrestle him, which I think is what we're probably going to see from Kakhramonov here, especially early. Man, Kakhramonov, he's got good skills, but he tends to gas. And, we've seen in his losses, it's been a result of not being able to sustain a pace, not being able to keep up with somebody's volume in the Umar Nurmagomedov fight, not being able to land anything that really scared Nurmagomedov and put him off. He throws and misses a lot, really commits on his shot. I would say sometimes overcommits pretty hard. And so he's spending energy on accomplishing nothing. He does what Daniel Cormier would call a lot of big actions, right? Where he's spinning, he's jumping, he's flying all around, he's sprinting. And I think that that's really hard for him to sustain. Now you add to that, he comes in on short notice. Now you add to that he missed weight, right? I think he tried it. I think he gave a pretty honest effort to make the weight, but it was kind of an impossible ask. They're like, hey man, can you shrink yourself 30 pounds in the next week? He's like, no, I probably can't do that, but he tried his best. I'm still pissed that he missed the weight because I'm lining up to bet against him, but I do think he probably had a tough cut. I think he's probably got 7 minutes of cardio in this spot. And, Trevin Jones has shown he's the type of guy who can take an ass whipping and come back.
Resilient.
I think that Trevin Jones at plus money was a must bet. I think that if you got that Kakhramonov line at plus 250, that's a must bet too, because this is a closer than a plus 250 type fight. I don't think either guy should have been a minus 200 or I should say a minus 300 favorite. I think you could line Trevin Jones anywhere from minus 150 to minus 186 here, depending on how aggressively you want to cap, basically how much you want to penalize Kakhramonov for the fact that this fight's on short notice. And the fact that he missed weight, fighters historically that miss weight don't overperform their lines. But because it's a short notice fight, I feel like it's less significant that he missed weight. If somebody has notice and misses weight, it's normally an injury. It's a problem. Whereas, in this case, I just find myself disappointed that the man missed weight, but also understanding of his situation. I hope it's going to be an absolute banger. That's what I'm expecting. But I think Trevin Jones is going to find a finish here. And I wouldn't be surprised if he catches him with the hands. But I also would not be surprised to see Trevin Jones fire off a takedown of his own in round 2. or round 3 and, find that submission. So I think it should be a hell of a fight, though, man. Kakhramonov, he's not just some scrub from the regional scene. He's a guy who's been, taking tough challenges. He's been having credible fights with real opponents. He's a guy who's improving. So I think Kakhramonov going to have a future in the UFC. Just think this is a really tough first fight for him. And we've seen Trevin Jones, when he was in this position, overperform. So now he's in a position where he's been preparing for this fight, where he shows up well ahead of time, on weight, prepared, ready to go. I kind of feel good about Trevin Jones in this spot. But man, let's look and see, because it's going to be a hell of a damn fight, man. And Kakhramonov just looked a little doughy at weigh-ins too, man. He did not look like he was in like a serious training camp before this. It looked like he was like probably training, messing around, like hadn't gotten a call yet for his next fight. And so I do think
Oh,
hello?
You back? How you doing?
We're back. Sorry about that, boss.
No worries. I completely get exactly everything what you're saying, and I really like your bet spot. But Jones to me is a dog, and he will always be a guy I love to back as an underdog. But I don't think I'm going to bet him here as a favorite. If I had your line, I definitely would. I think Kakhramonov has a bright future in the UFC. It's just a tough ass on the first short notice replacement. Got to cut him some slack for the 3 days notice, right? I know he missed weight, but I don't blame him as much. I think that's going to be a great fight for as long as it lasts, because you never know how it goes. We haven't really seen Jones' games be tested really on the ground. I know he has a black belt, but I was expecting Ronnie Lawrence to come out and expose a bit of his ground game. So I'm really excited to see how crazy I would be if I did lay that. I was about to have multiple units on Ronnie Lawrence that night. So I'm very excited to see how he looks against Kakhramonov, because it'll be a good tell in case they do match up again in the future.
And I think Ronnie Lawrence, was a comparable challenge. I do think that Ronnie Lawrence was a comparable challenge to Kakhramonov. And that's why, I think that, man, I'm just a little surprised by the fact that odds makers dropped the line at -300. That to me says something interesting.
A lot, yeah.
Obviously, the market buyback is significant, and the market is right a lot of the time. But one of the patterns that I've noticed in combat sports is that when there's a big market correction one way and the market starts to come back the other way hard, that's normally an indication that it's a sharp buyback. It's not just casual fans the night of the event. And so I'm hoping that I was part of a sharp buyback on Trevin Jones when he went to the underdog price. But, man, I think if you're lining up with plus money in this fight, you're in a much better position than backing either one of these guys as a favorite based on what we know. But what we do know is that Trevin Jones is a much more experienced professional, and he's beaten better guys. And so for that reason alone, I think he should be a -125. I think he should be outright favored no matter what, because he's done it. He's been there, done that, and he's been preparing for this fight for these dates. So, man, I don't know. I kind of don't understand the line, but I'll take it, man. Trevin Jones at plus money, I'll take it.
Yeah, man, and we are all over the place here. So shout out to Carter. I know you're going to be rewatching it later. Absolute gem. So if you are watching it later, we are all over the place here. So we'll get to them. But moving right along, one fight that I was really, really looking forward to the weigh-ins is just to see how big this height difference really is. And oh my God, Malecki is an absolute monster compared to Nunes. So we talked about it yesterday. It's going to be Nunes getting in the pocket or Malecki keeping out range. And this is one of those women's fights where they don't say it very often, but I wouldn't be surprised if I saw a finish in this fight, because I think they both have their different path to victories. I know Malecki's is going to be all in her size. That's going to be it. But she does throw with a lot of power, but a lot slower. I know Nunes has got got great hands. She blitzes in. She's got a lot of potential as well. This is a fight where the more I see the size, the more I do want to bet on Bea Malecki, because I think she has advantages in a lot of different places in this fight. And you give her 9 inches in height, and it's just something that is absolutely crazy. So I am leaning Bea Malecki a lot here, but I'm not completely sold. Do you want to convince me, or you want to talk me off the ledge here?
I would tell you that if you feel confident enough to back either one of these ladies, God bless you. I do not. Uh, I think we've got about 10 professional fights between the two of them.
Oh, exactly.
So very limited data set. And, obviously the physical advantages tell the story, right? That's why Bea Malecki is the favorite, in my opinion. I don't think either of these women have necessarily distinguished themselves as a threat in the division, someone to watch or so. It's like these are two of the lower level people in one of the weaker divisions in the UFC, women's bantamweight. So I don't know what to make of this fight, man. From a betting perspective, you'd want to line up behind Bea Malecki or nothing here just because of those physical advantages. They are undeniable. But am I going to back a chalk price on somebody with 2 professional bouts to their name? That is, for me, where I find it tough. Now, it's also how many opportunities do you get to bet against somebody like a Josiane Nunes, who's not very talented, doesn't have a tremendous amount of upside necessarily, and is so out physicaled in terms of size here? Who knows, man? I think that this is a fight I didn't spend a tremendous amount of time, effort, or energy on.
Good thing you did.
I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn from this fight. I'm going to probably watch this fight. I'm kidding, of course. I'll watch it. But just a fight that I'm not altogether stoked about. It's a fight that is going to come and go for me. I like to try and get a little bit more data. I have a hard time sometimes figuring out these women's fights. And so I want more data versus less data when I'm making one of these bold proclamations. And I don't have a very strong read on this fight. And frankly, I didn't spend enough time to warrant one.
I completely agree. And there's a couple of fights like that in this card where they're just so hard to read because there's so many different possible outcomes. None that I really feel safe throwing my money on. I mean, the Lingo Saldana fight is another one that I'm really going to stay away from just because I see a lot of people on different sides and I see all their points. And it's just one of those ones where I don't have a real grasp on it. I know you don't have any action on it. Do you want to cover that real quick?
Yeah, man, it's another fight that I didn't go tremendously deep on. I think that Austin Lingo, I made the joke, I think it was on my stream, that, he convinced me Yusuf Zalal might be a good fighter. I'm kidding, of course. I think Yusuf Zalal's got some talent, just not, not able to distinguish himself at the UFC level. Just seems like, an upper level regional pro. But man, I don't know what to make of this fight. Saldana, I think, has the physical advantages here in a pretty significant way. I think we've seen Lingo walk through some damage before, though. So, I'm not certain that Saldana is going to be able to take him out. I know everybody hates on Saldana's last fight. Probably didn't deserve the win there, but, kind of tough to come through in one of those roles. I think that was his UFC debut, if I'm not mistaken.
Against Zalal. Yeah.
And I'm talking about the Saldana fight against
Griffin.
My bad.
No, it was
the Murdoch fight on the Contender Series.
Yes.
Which I don't know what really to draw in terms of conclusions from that fight, but he did technically outland Griffin in terms of significant strikes in that fight, and obviously should have lost it. But I don't know. I feel like that was, it wasn't a embarrassing performance or anything. I thought it was a little concerning from a durability perspective. I thought he got hurt pretty bad, but I think that the Jacob Kilburn win for Austin Lingo isn't really something to write home about. So, I think based on physical advantages, it makes sense to have Saldana a slight favorite here. But I also, just like you, I don't really feel very strongly convicted on this fight. I have noticed that the line is moving, though. Saldana was like minus 130, and that line has come in a little bit. I think Z said he was on Saldana.
He is.
At that favorite price tag. So, I see people with a confident take, and God bless them. If I revisit the tape and something jumps out at me, I'll tweet out a pick on this fight for sure before fight time, but I'm not very strongly convicted. I would say Saldana, probably minus 115 to minus 125 in my head, based on what we know.
Yeah, and I think if you are going to bet Lingo in the spot, I do think that his best path to victory here is going to be a KO. He's not a minute winner. He does have very explosive power, though, and I think that, well, we know that Saldana is no Jacob Kilburn, so big difference here. I, I have no read on it at all, so it's a complete pass for me. So thank you for taking over and breaking that one down because no, thank you. Another
I
fight
thought
we talked about.
Saldana looked pretty good physically though
Oh, he
at
does.
weigh-ins.
Yeah,
He looked pretty cut up. So for whatever that's
yeah,
worth.
yeah. And another fight too that I'm not big of a reader. We talked about it earlier. We're gonna skip over the Knight Shront fight. Don't think that any of them are really contenders at all. Knight's very one dimensional as well. Sharant is low level in my opinion. So that's also a pass fight in terms of DraftKings and betting. But I do end Knight there. I think you do too. The one fight though that I really do want to cover before I have to go win some money betting on some MLB DFS. Is that going to be that Kelleher Pilarte fight? I mean, I told you yesterday the one parlay piece I think I have this whole entire slate is going to be Brian Kelleher. I now have plus money going in on him this weekend after Ferrer got that first round knockout.
Very nice.
I think that this is his fight all day. I'm not very high on Pilarte. I think that Keller has a wrestling advantage. I think he's got the hand advantage, hand speed advantage, and I think personally that Pilarte's going to be dropped the same way that Newsom dropped him not that long ago. What about you?
I could see that outcome for sure, and I think I would favor Brian Kelleher. I don't know that I love his current money line price. I want to say he's sitting at minus 175 or so. Having plus money is a good look. So that was well played by you. Um, but yeah, at minus 175, I feel like that's maybe appropriately priced, if not a little bit generous towards Brian. And just because, he is a little bit older in this division, he's got good skills. I like Brian Keller. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch. He's a lot of fun. He's a New Yorker. He's got that dangerous submission game. Very, very solid guillotine threat. But
insane
not the
guillotine.
most process-oriented type of, grappling paths. Like he's not going to just like out wrestle somebody over the course of 15 minutes and take their back and submit them. Like that's not what Brian Keller does. He's like a finish hunter. He's trying to knock you out on the feet. He's trying to club and sub you. He's trying to catch you in transition if you go for a takedown. And that's who Brian Keller is. So, could I see Brian Keller winning this fight? Yeah, for sure. I think he should be favored. But I like backing Brian Kelleher when he's an underdog. I like backing Brian Kelleher at a huge plus money line when the market is sleeping on his ability to finish a fight. But the market's acutely aware of Brian Keller's ability to finish this fight. And if anything, they might just be sleeping on Domingo Pilarte. He's got a lot of physical advantages in this fight. Bigger, taller, longer, looked it at weigh-ins, looked physically cut up at weigh-ins, looks like a solid athlete. And he's been away for a while, I believe. Or how long ago was that fight?
The one where he got dropped?
Yes. I think it's been a little while now. Yeah, it was February of 2020. So about 18 months he's been away. And, man, I think Domingo Pilarte, we could see significant improvements in 18 months away from the game. I think that's the requisite amount of time. Like he took a solid amount of time off after a bad knockout like that, which is good for his career, and I think that I don't like Brian at that price tag, but I do like Brian in the fight. I think Brian is the better fighter. I think he's proven a lot more, but because of some of those physical advantages, because of how Brian fights, and putting himself on the line and being in the pocket and wanting to, get that fight of the night, wanting to get that bonus. He is a bonus hunter, man. And those kind of fighters scare me sometimes because they're willing to go out on their shield for the entertainment. And I'm like, I'd just be a little worried if he's exchanging with a guy who's so big and long. Brian obviously packs a hard punch, but Domingo Pilarte, he does too. He's a serious puncher. He can definitely knock out somebody like Brian if Brian gets reckless. So I hope that Brian approaches this smart. I think that he could definitely drop the boom on him. I would expect Brian should win this fight, but probably not a fight I'm gonna invest in because I'm a little scared, man. I'm a little scared of the physical advantages on the Domingo Plarte side and just the mentality of somebody like Brian Kelleher. I want somebody who's going to win boring. I want somebody who doesn't care if the crowd boos him. I'm dead serious. You know what I mean? Whereas if somebody is like going to be swayed by how, you know what, everybody's starting to ramp up, you know, people are cheering right now, I should go for it. That kind of thing just scares me ever so slightly. And at a minus 175, that's why I wouldn't be interested. But I think, man, having a plus money look on Brian Kelleher, you're sailing. You're sailing. That's a good look.
The big thing that sold it for me is him going down the division. I mean, he's fought way bigger guys weight wise, and he's going to be able to have the wrestling advantage here clear in this fight. And Fletcher wants to try to throw up the subs he usually does. Kelleher's got a nasty, nasty squeeze. So I don't know if I would do that too much. I loving Brian Kelleher, one of my favorite plays this week. Loving that. We touched on a lot of the fights. I mean,
we didn't touch on Roosevelt Roberts and Ignacio.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. Both don't really have a play on that one, so I was leaving it till the end. I do lean Roberts on experience, on major ground game. I'm just scared of his IQ, which is why I have not placed a bet at all. For those who are following the channel, my co-host Kiro is editing a video for us as we speak that should be out later tonight, which will be covering everything. I do like Roosevelt Roberts as a DFS option this week because I do think he is able to snatch up a neck if he is smart enough to take it to the ground. We've seen Ignacio throw blind or go for blind takedowns where he sticks his neck out so far that Roberts will take and will guillotine that. So it's one of these spots where I'm not confident enough in the fighter's ability to recognize it and his IQ in general, but I do think he has the tools to win this fight. What about you?
I would tend to agree with you, man. Having said that, you know, I'd have liked to see more from Ignacio Bahamondes. I meant to revisit the tape to watch more of his grappling. Haven't seen a tremendous amount of it, but I did see just a little bit. I was going through some of his training footage on Instagram and stuff like that. Not to say that I use that as like, you know, the basis of my capping, but like I looked through his old fights, didn't see a tremendous amount of grappling. But then I looked through some of the more recent footage that he's putting out, working with a lot of smaller, shorter guys. Even the likes of Bilal Muhammad, who frankly looked like a lightweight compared to him. You know, this guy is massive, and he looked like he was in tremendous physical condition. As the line starts to get more and more in favor of Roosevelt Roberts, I would start to just have a little bit of puzzlement. Why? You know, what has Roosevelt Roberts done to distinguish himself necessarily? You know, he has a couple of UFC wins, but not over the most tremendous, you know, talent levels. Got some questionable looking losses in the bunch as well. And, you know, I don't know. I feel like Roosevelt Roberts, we've seen he's made silly mistakes against fighters he's supposed to beat more than one time. And sometimes in embarrassing fashion. You know, I feel like he gets stung on the feet with some regularity as well. And
yeah,
this is somebody that could sting him on the feet. You know, Ignacio throws long. He's got pretty decent range tools. What he's not that good at is maintaining his distance, you know, and we saw that his last time out. But I think John McDessie is a much better striker than he's given credit for. You know, I don't think people understand that it's not always about the size. Sometimes it's about the quality of the skills, right? And John McDessie was able to absorb shots. You know, it wasn't like John McDessie went untouched in that fight. He was willing to eat a jab to counter with a massive hook, by example. And so he did thudding damage that really rocked Ignacio and set up more strikes. Whereas Ignacio was doing a fine job for the first 2 minutes, you know, bouncing around the outside, getting off on volume, looking like he normally does. And then he got absolutely rocked and had to work his way, earn his way back into that fight, you know. And I thought he showed off tremendous heart and durability, given the fact that McDessie kind of beat the hell out of him. And he came back to win that third round on most of, I would say, most people's scorecards. And what's really impressive about that is that, you know, he ends up earning a split decision there when his face was bloody, battered. Every visual is going against him, and he gets the split decision. I'm like, man, this guy Ignacio Bahamondes at plus 135 he's up to, that to me is starting to get interesting. You know, I do think Roosevelt should be able to exploit him on the ground here, but Roosevelt isn't always the most impressive with his use of his wrestling. I think sometimes he tires himself out trying to use it. I think sometimes he doesn't understand where his advantages are as a taller wrestler. He ends up doing things like lifting up high crotches, trying to be Daniel Cormier, and doing these like big explosive lifts. When you have length like that, you should be doing trips. You should be, you should be taking the back, standing, like just certain things to me that stand out as like ways to maximize his gifts. I'm not seeing that. Even in the striking realm, I don't see him maximize his range necessarily. And, he's done a decent enough job picking apart guys with the jab and stuff from space, but he's still hittable and he still gets hit, by shots that he probably shouldn't against lower level fighters. And that makes me think that this is, a fairly even fight. I think this should be a fun one, but I would caution people from backing Roosevelt Roberts as the line starts to get wider and wider here. I think that Roosevelt Roberts probably was the deserving favorite, but this line has flipped from opening price, and it continues to go out in the Roosevelt Roberts direction. And my question is just why? Like, Roosevelt Roberts hasn't proved all that much in the UFC, and so I'd want a pretty good reason to back him at greater than -150, given the fact that he's tweeting and texting the commentators, hey, I'm about to go out there and knock this guy out in the first round, and then getting submitted 40 seconds later. It's like his focus seems to be on the wrong priorities. And that's after he's already pulled that stunt once and then pulls it again. It's like, that's just embarrassing. And I don't know. -150, fair enough, but I think that might look a little silly in retrospect. He's fighting somebody who's like the exact same size as him. He doesn't have some of his normal advantages. But we've also seen Roosevelt Roberts has beaten people at size parity before, to the best of my recollection. So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility. I do favor Roosevelt ever so slightly, but I think the line's starting to get away. I think he should be -125 here, maybe -145. But, if he exploits that grappling path from Jump Street, he's going to look like a -250. So that I will acknowledge that, he could look better, but I just think based on IQ, it's hard to expect that he's going to show up and do the right thing for 15 minutes. It's like that seems very unlikely to me. So unless he gets an early finish, he'll have plenty of time to make mistakes and throw it away. And he's shown himself willing and capable of doing that. So that for me
is terrifying.
Hard to at -150 like that.
Yeah, it's terrifying to have your money on a guy with low fight IQ. I mean, it's right up there with cardio. It's two things that you're scared to be backing. And I apologize for looking away during this. I just posted some MLB lines for this. The model's running in the background. We're doing great. Check out Gordo Gambles on Twitter if you aren't already. But yeah, man, I mean, we covered all the fights except for one, the big boys, Chase Sherman versus Parker Porter. I know that our co-host yesterday, the guy on your show, Mr. Z's MMA, was super huge on Chase Sherman. I don't think I'm as huge, but I do think he is very, very live to finish here. I think he's a great GPP option because if he does win, it'll likely be first or second round KO, which will score huge for you on DraftKings. The problem I have is cardio. And like I said earlier, I'm not a fan of backing people with low cardio. And all props to Parker Porter. He looks great. Like, he looks a lot better than he usually does. So I think Chase Sherman is a side here. I think that he is the rightful favorite. I think that for good reason, he should finish this fight. He is a better fighter in a lot of places. I'm just scared to put my money in someone who will gas out, who will struggle with certain things like leg kicks or durability or lots of stuff that Parker Porter may be able to exploit. So I'm leaning heavily on Chase Sherman. I have not pulled the trigger on an inside the distance play, which is what I would bet if I am betting. But I do like him on DraftKings. So what about you on this final fight?
Well, out of respect, I don't want to give away who it is, but I will say that I was in contact with a very, very sharp bettor who is also extremely high on Chase Sherman this weekend. And, it's in part, backing Chase Sherman because he's been in there with better quality opponents. He's been in there with the likes of Andrei Arlovsky and had a competitive decision after allegedly blowing out his ACL 5 minutes before he walked out to fight him, which sounds absolutely horrific. And, God bless him for pulling through and taking the fight, much less, making it somewhat competitive. And so, I find it a little hard to believe that Parker Porter is going to get Chase Sherman out of there. I think Parker Porter, it's a heavyweight fight. He obviously could. He's got decent enough hands, but Parker Porter probably more likely to steal a decision I think, in this spot. A late finish, not outside the realm of possibility. We've talked about the cardio concerns on the Sherman side, but I do think that Sherman, he looked significantly longer, taller, bigger, probably just a more functional fighter all around. And I think that as long as he's able to keep this fight upright, we should see, Chase Sherman thwacking with leg kicks. He should be controlling the range of this fight. And I think that he probably punches harder. He's got decent elbows too. So, man, I really think that Chase Sherman's probably going to bloody and batter him here. And hopefully he doesn't spend himself, looking for that early finish and gas himself out. But I think if he takes a measured approach here, and just puts consistent pressure on Parker Porter, he should get a finish in the first 2 rounds. And that would be how I would target this fight. From a betting perspective, I think Z was really onto something there. And, I would just think if you could limit your exposure and take Chase Sherman inside the distance as opposed to, I don't know though, because I think Chase Sherman could definitely bank 2 rounds and coast. But it's heavyweight, man. It's kind of hard to imagine the fight going all 3 rounds when it's so low level. Low level heavyweights, it's like the Greg Hardy and Tai Tuivasa fight. It's like destined for somebody to go down in meme-like fashion. But
Tai Tuivasa all day. That's my guy.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
Made me do a shoey that night.
I don't think I backed Greg Hardy that night, thank goodness, but I had considered it. But, man, I had considered it for the same reason and then didn't play it for the reason that happened 2 seconds later. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like Greg Hardy could probably really do some damage on the feet. He's a lot faster, better athlete. And then I was like, he's also an idiot, though. So he might just do something stupid.
I was sitting there with recording the video on this channel here, and I posted out, in quote, I said, if Tai Tuivasa gets a first-round knockout, I will do a shoey with him. And look what happens. It was awesome. And all my friends are watching it. Did a shoey, posted it on the Twitter. Go check that out if you haven't, because, everyone loves a shoey, right? But yeah, I completely agree with all the points you said. Chase Sherman's rightful favorite in this spot, and I'm liking him in many different contests. And with that, we close out the predictions for every single fight in a crazy order. But I got to ask you, I know you're not a big DraftKings player, but tell me, who are you liking most to get finishes or to get dominant victories in this week? Who are your go-tos for players you like to win more than others, or like more locks, or fighters who you think have higher upside in terms of finishes or more strikes landed or control time?
All righty. Well, I will give these. First and foremost, I'm going to put Trevin Jones on my list. I think Trevin Jones is an opportunistic finisher. I think you're probably going to get a pretty short price on Trevin Jones this weekend. He's a short favorite. I don't know what his DraftKings price would be, but he's got 2 knockouts in the UFC. Yep.
The problem with DraftKings is they release lines early in the week, so his line on DraftKings is what he was to Martinez, or I think it's who was betting, right? So whereas he's around the same price range as he's 8,800, so he's the same as like a Chase Sherman or a Marco Madsen. Unfortunately, because I would like him at a short favorite price. But yeah, go on.
Understood. So yeah, then in that case, let me take a look here at the slate and see if anything else jumps out at me. What is the price on Vince Pichel?
8,200. He is right around evens. I was just going to talk about it myself. I think he gets control times, takedowns, and even a potential finish. So he is one of my favorite core plays for this week.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, as a shorter price, I like Vince Pichel. I think Chase Sherman has a pretty decent chance to finish. Hard to bank on it, but I think Jared Cannonier is at least more likely than Kelvin to finish. But man, that one, I don't even know how to approach that on a DraftKings perspective. That fight's weird. Pilarte Kelleher, I like from a violence perspective. I think somebody's getting finished there. So take your side there, and I don't know what the prices look like, but I would think somebody's going to get finished in that fight. Other than that, fight that I'm confident is going to go under, I think Brahimaj might be a decent play. I think Palatnikov might be a sneaky play. But I know that early finishes count for more than late finishes. Is that right?
Yes.
Brahimaj is probably the side then for that fight. But, Palatnikov, like I said, if you're looking for a sneaky play, somebody that might be lower priced, he is a short underdog. He's not a significant underdog, but I think he does have some finishing upside down the stretch here. And we've seen Brahimaj fade, so it's not outside the realm of possibility. Also, Brahimaj's numbers on the feet are horrendous. Granted, it's only one fight so far to track statistically, but just really, really bad in terms of both output and defense. So some red flags there. If it turns into a prolonged striking affair, I think we could see a lot of the same things play out where he's just getting lit up, set on fire on the feet.
Yeah, and I'm going to have a full video breaking it down later today on this channel, so stay tuned for that. But personally, I am liking the value price tag on Vince Pichel. I'm loving Raheem Brahimaj as an early finish. I think Chase Sherman has great potential to finish up top. And if you're looking for a fighter with a high floor, I think that both Kelleher and Marco Madsen will secure takedowns, they'll get control times, and they should win. The problem with them is I don't see them finishing as much as other fighters on the slate. Underdogs, Roy Val's a good, just full send kind of option. I mean, he's pretty risky, and I do like Gastelum because, like I said earlier, don't know if he's getting finished, so he does have that potential to land those strikes and get score that other underdogs don't, right? On weeks like this where no underdogs win, you need the ones who are going to get the most points for you no matter what, who are going to go to decision, who are going to get some points for you, right? So I think out of everyone on the slate, even though he's facing the Killa Gorilla, I am liking Kelvin Gastelum. So that concludes all we have to talk about today. I do appreciate you for coming on. I'll give you a few minutes to plug all your socials. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. Come back anytime. I always love shooting the breeze about these fights, and especially after we get the chance to see weigh-ins, sometimes that can sway our opinions a little bit, add to our conviction, maybe steer us away from making a bad investment. So I think that I've had a ton of fun, man. I appreciate you having me on. If the people are looking for what I've got going on, I actually wrote my first article today for Roto Grinder. So if you're interested in a write-up on the Trevin Jones Kakramanov fight, pretty proud of that. You can check that out on my Twitter at LiamPicksFights. You can find me on Instagram at LiamPicksFights. And you can find me on YouTube at LiamPicksFights. And I did a full card breakdown for this week with Gordon and with Z. And I am very excited to announce that next week on my show, I'm going to have Uncle Weezy. I'm going to have Paul Shaughnessy. And I am also going to be having Al Mac odds. So very excited. I got a hot slate coming for the people next week. And really looking forward to breaking down that card. We got Edson Barboza and Giga Chikadze. Absolutely should be a fun slate. And, man, if you want to do this again, I'd be happy to get back on here and talk about them all again with you.
All right, same time next week.
Sounds like a plan, brother. Good stuff.
No, I appreciate everyone tuning in for this. Everyone watching this after the fact as well. You know where to find me as well on Twitter. Ask me the question about the fights. I will send out some. Appreciate you learning some more about the DFS side of this too. I know you're really sharp on all the betting stuff too, so I appreciate your input on all this. Thank everyone for spending your time here, and thank you for coming along.
Absolutely. And the last thing I wanted to plug on the way out is just I work with Delphi Sports. My man at Delphi Commish, absolutely killing it on the baseball front, NFL, basketball. He does everything that is stick and ball, mainstream sports. I am a combat sports nut. I don't know anything about that stuff. I know that Gordo can help you out with stuff like that too. So I just wanted to shout out my man Delphi Commish and Delphi Sports. Got big things coming in the future. It's not just going to be Liam Picks Fights, but just wanted to leave you guys with that. Thank you guys so much.
No, thank you very much for spending your time. And let's make some money.
Cheers. And good luck to everybody. Good guys versus the bookies each and every week.
Let's go. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good one.
Be well, boss.